Welcome. What is going on, you guys? Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Jeremy, and movies are terrible. So, I wanted to let you guys know that starting this week, I am going to be going live on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I will be sharing the links over social media. However, I have two different channels. That's right. Both of them have the same name, though, which makes it confusing. But one of the channels is going to be dedicated more to horror-related content, while the Movies Are Terrible channel, which is what you're checking out right now, is actually going to continue to be a more blockbuster-driven, major release podcast, which I really enjoy talking about both of these. I just feel like each of them kind of deserves their own platform, so I didn't want to mesh these two things together when I think they stand so well on their own. So yeah, I've got some cool topics to discuss with you today. Before I get into that, wanted to give a quick thank you and a shout out to those of you guys who did come by and check out the podcast yesterday, as well as those of you who may be watching it now or after the stream is over. Yeah, alright, so today we're going to talk a little bit about Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. We're going to talk a little bit about Billy Dee returning to his iconic role of Lando Calrissian from the Star Wars series in the upcoming Star Wars Episode 9. And we're going to rank my top favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Was going to do an entire top 20 list, but I hadn't made it to see Ant-Man yet. Yeah, I know. What kind of a movie fan am I, right? Well, there's been some stuff going on. I hadn't had as much time lately, and I've been watching a lot more television lately. What have I been watching? I've started American Gods. I just finished Glow Season 2. Rewatching Game of Thrones. I've got a couple things going in rotation right now. Actually watching Comedians in Coffee Getting Cars with Jerry Seinfeld and whatever guest comedians he has on there. So yeah, a lot of checking out different shows, different things that I just haven't kept up with as much because I hadn't been able to make it to the movies. But we are ordering the AMC cards. What do they call it? I can't remember what the title for it is, but whatever the new AMC member card that is competing with Movie Pass is. And yeah, it's a little more expensive, but to be quite honest, Movie Pass sucks. I championed them for like fucking 2 years. Like anybody who would listen, I was like, oh, Movie Pass is amazing. You gotta get Movie Pass. And then when I ordered it, I had problems with my account. Couldn't get anybody on the phone with customer service. Started sending them nasty tweets, and they had this like fucking little chat message feature on the app. And it escalated. It started off like, hey, just wanted to get some help with my account there. If you could just reach out to me and let me know what to do, we'll get this taken care of. And by like text number 16, I'm like, look here, you motherfuckers. Your business practices suck. You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm going to tell everybody I know that you're a dirtbag. And here I am, about a year later, still telling everybody what a dirtbag they are over there. So yeah, what else? What else? I'm running short on small talk, so I guess we're going to go ahead and jump into topic number 1. Okay, so let me pull up the article here. It looks like in addition to the Harley Quinn movie that was just now announced to be in production, and in addition to the upcoming Joker project with Jared Leto, that we are getting yet another Joker movie starring Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix's standalone Joker movie has actually happened, and yes, Jared Leto one might still happen too. Oh, that seems a little less self-assured than the last couple articles that I read, so maybe they are thinking of back-burnering it. It's confusing. I don't know what they're doing over there at Warner Brothers with all of their comic book properties. Obviously, it's okay to have multiple versions of the same character. I mean, we've had several different actors portray the Joker, and I've liked all of them for different reasons in different ways. And yeah, even Jared Leto had some traits to his character that I enjoyed. So you know, everybody's tried to do a distinctly different style, and again, I've never had a problem with the characters being reinvented. Fuck, they are in the comic books all the time. What's weird, though, is how close together they're coming out, right? It reminds me of Jon Favreau did the Jungle Book, and then Andy Serkis did Mowgli, which is supposedly like a darker, grittier version of the Jungle Book, but they shelved Mowgli for a couple years to kind of give it some space, and that was a different studio. This is Warner Brothers coming out with 2 different Joker movies with 2 different actors playing the Joker within a couple years span, and we don't even know who Batman is yet. What the fuck is going on over there, you guys? So, the as of yet untitled film will be directed by Todd Phillips, who you probably know from The Hangover, but he also directed War Dogs, and it will start shooting this September. At one point, Marty Scorsese's name was attached to the project, but since then, in the more recent reports, I haven't seen anything about that. So it's really unclear as to whether Scorsese's going to be involved at the executive producer capacity this time around. Let's see here. The budget for Phillips and Phoenix's Joker movie is said to be around $55 million, far below the hundreds of millions of dollars that other superhero movies have to work with. Okay, I like that piece of news. You know, $55 million is right there in that sweet spot of, you know, you got to be creative and you got to be, you know, be focused on good storytelling. Whereas with something like the Batman v Superman or Justice League, they get so caught up in the spectacle that they forget that it really, at the end of the day, it's about the characters. Now, Todd Phillips isn't a guy that screams to me, you know, that he has a serious understanding of the tone or the characters. I mean, the Hangover is kind of nasty, mean-spirited humor. The second one, the second and the third get pretty dark. And then War Dogs, you know, is a bit more dramatic, and I thought that it was good. Still a little bit weird, kind of contrasting tones. War Dogs does remind me, other than the fact that Jonah Hill is in it, just tonally a little bit to Wolf of Wall Street. But Todd Phillips is no Martin Scorsese. So when I did see the 2 of their names were attached to this project, I wasn't, you know, surprised to hear them working together. I was just surprised to hear either of their names in the mix with a comic book property. But again, that $55 million is a positive little piece of news because it's not going to have to make a fuck ton of money to turn a profit. I mean, it's not such high stakes games like with the, I mean, Aquaman's coming up soon. How much did that movie cost? I'd imagine a lot. If it doesn't kick ass on its opening weekend, then it's, you know, it's not going to recoup a lot of its money. I mean, Justice League was, I don't know, some people would say that it was a straight up flop, but I don't know enough about the industry to say one way or the other. It looked like it about broke even, which I'm sure you couldn't be too happy with that. That's not a win. But anyways, part of the idea here is for filmmakers to be able to experiment with the DC characters. Let's pull this up right here so you can see it. And it says that this movie is going to be an exploration of a man disregarded by society. The film is described as not only a gritty character study, but also a broader cautionary tale. So, I mean, I kind of like the synopsis of that as well. Just the tone is going to make a huge deal to me. I don't see Joaquin Phoenix doing a very traditional comedy. That's really not what he's known for. He's a little bit of an eccentric, but I'm a fan of him, and I would like to see his take on the Joker. I think he's an interesting actor and an interesting choice. So, yeah, I mean, I'm cool with the idea of it if it existed in a vacuum, right? However, unfortunately, it does not exist in a vacuum, and I am aware of all of the other things going on over there with the productions of, I mean, most of the press that we've heard about Warner Brothers DC for the majority of the time has just made it seem like they didn't have strong leadership, and that it was constantly in a volatile state where people were getting shuffled around and fired and hired, and just a lot of things that trigger red flags. But look at that picture of Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker right there. That's pretty fucking cool, right? I think so. I like the look of it. It's very classic Joker. Very recognizable as the character. However, it is still its own kind of spin on it. So I'm fascinated. Color me intrigued because, I mean, this is fucking unprecedented. I've never heard of anything like this happening before. And depending on how this goes, we may never see anything like this happen again. It's like having 2 James Bond movies out at the same time. You can either watch the Pierce Brosnan version or the Daniel Craig version, but you gotta watch them both now because they're both in the theaters at the same fucking time. Alright, moving on along to Billy D returns to his iconic role as Lando Calrissian in Star Wars Episode 9. Okay. Sweet. Why did I put this story in here, you might be asking yourself. Well, Star Wars. We can't not talk about Star Wars. It's what people on the internet do, right? Especially nowadays. A lot of real constructive and positive conversations happening around Star Wars. Never seen the fans so united and so eager to share in their love of this beloved franchise that crosses generations. Yeah, Billy D. Williams is coming back to the trilogy. Well, that makes sense because I don't think he's like the only main original cast member that didn't return. I know that he was kind of in talks multiple times before. I don't think he was real sold on the idea originally. And granted, this dude is probably fine. He probably will never have to work again in his life. I mean, he's still got that OE money coming in. You know what I mean? Yeah. Old English. No, it was Colt 45. Fucking Colt 45. Hold up. Let me pull this up. I always forget. We got the technology to do fun shit here. Alright, guys. You ready? Let's check this out together.
Williams talks about Colt 45.
There are 2 rules to remember if you want to have a good time. Rule number 1, never run out of Colt 45. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. You want to know why you should keep plenty of Colt 45 on hand? You never know when friends might show up. I don't claim you can have a better time with Colt 45 than without it. But why take chances?
The power
Man, he sounded drunk as fuck on that commercial, didn't he? Oh, Billy D. What's funny, though, is I know, like, during the production of Solo, right, Alden Ehrenreich is, like, you know, getting introduced to Harrison Ford, trying to get insight on the characters. There's, like, this almost unspoken passing of the baton, or kind of giving the blessing from the Don, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's in good hands. You're a good kid. I give you my blessings with the role and shit. And it sounds like, you know, Harrison Ford is known in the community as being still real crotchety old fucker. Like, not stoked. Never was like a huge lover of Star Wars and all of that. But when they were in this situation, and Alden Ehrenreich came and approached him, and they kind of had this conversation. Things went well, and then he was kind of given some insight as to how you should portray the character and all this to Alden, and Alden Ehrenreich seemed super gracious. And then you hear about the conversation that Donald Glover has with Billy D. Williams, right? Granted, now Donald Glover and Alden Ehrenreich, totally different ends of the spectrum of celebrity. Like, Alden Ehrenreich is not a household name. Everybody knows who Donald Glover is, right? Dude's fucking super talented. But anyways, so Donald Glover goes to meet with Billy D. Williams, and he says that, like, Billy D. did not even look him in the face the whole time. And Donald Glover's like, well, do you have any advice for me? Is there anything I should keep in mind when I'm playing this character? And he says, yeah, man, just be charming. Said he never even looked him in the face, and that was, like, the only thing he said to him. So it sounds like... hold up. Sounds like he didn't quite have the words of wisdom that Donald Glover may have been hoping for. Can you see that trailer? I guess we can't hear anything, can we? What are they talking about over here? Like, get off my girl.
Charm. And right now in Hollywood, there is no one who could take that on better than Donald Glover.
You look phenomenal.
Well, I knew I was going to see you. I love Donald Glover. I think he's great.
I love Emilia Clarke. I think she's great.
Within the scene.
She seems like super fucking cool, right?
Keeps refreshing. It's incredible.
Yeah, Emilia Clarke seems rad. Can't wait for the last season of Game of Thrones, by the way. It's been a long night. A long night. Long night. Man, my accents are on point. I don't even know what the fuck that was. So, alright, what are we talking about here? Joaquin Phoenix is the Joker. Then we were talking about Lando Calrissian. And we'll go ahead and move on from that in just a second. I did want to kind of see if there was any more information about the casting. Let's see. This is from Entertainment Weekly about a week ago. Entertainment Weekly about Lando Calrissian. And, you know, since 2014, there were rumors he might make a cameo. We learned months before the release of Rian Johnson's movie that Calrissian would not be making an appearance. Now there are reports from the latest Hollywood Reporter that Williams, who is now 81, will be turning up in director J.J. Abrams. Why is it? Oh, yeah, episode 9. Sorry, I thought that was an 11, which starts filming this summer for release in December 2019. Lucasfilm and Disney have not confirmed this, but they also haven't denied it. That's enough for EW to say it's real, but for fans eager to see older Lando again, such non-denials evoke a line from a very different film.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am a huge fan of Lando. I'm not a huge fan of Billy D. Williams, just at least from what I've seen from him. Where's that shit coming from?
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, with Kieran, who plays...
There we go. Sorry about that. Some sort of Game of Thrones shit coming through the wire, man. So anyways, I don't really... it's kind of sad to see these really, really old people playing these characters. I don't know how else to say it. I really liked seeing Luke in the way that he was portrayed in The Last Jedi. Han, a little bit less so, man. I hate to say it. Thought he was pretty good in Blade Runner, but it's just like bring back the dude from the original. Yeah, he's 900 years old, but fans really liked him when he wasn't. You know, I don't know. It feels wrong to be like digging these fucking people up out of their retirement. Like, I'm good. Like, Billy D. Williams looks like Ray Charles in that fucking picture right there. Like, can he even see anymore? Oh man, I just don't want to think about Billy D. Williams that way. I've gotten no comments so far. Thank you guys. We'll keep this conversation going. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to topic number 3. Ranking the MCU. This was supposed to be a top 20 list. It was supposed to be a top 20 list. However, did not get to see Ant-Man and the Wasp yet, as I had mentioned. Sorry about that. So we're just gonna do 19, and I do have a really difficult time with lists. I'm actually sitting here changing it right now as we speak, because you could ask me in 2 weeks and my answer will, I mean, shit, it'll definitely be different because I will have seen Ant-Man and the Wasp by then. But you know, these movies might be in other orders. I sat here and I really belabored over it. I spent a lot of time trying to come up with the list that best suited my sensibilities and my taste. So without further ado, because there's a fuckload to get to, let's go ahead and start with Iron Man 3. This is from Marvel's Phase 2. It features the Mandarin and Tony dealing with PTSD while he is in the middle of that. There's like the extremist program is going on. People are blowing up and shit, and there's this terrorist, known as the Mandarin, and Tony ends up basically getting stripped down and going back to basics, right? And he meets a kid who basically, God, I can't barely remember this one. Okay, that is why it's and that, my friends, is why it's number 19 on my list. No, it's just been a while since I saw it. I do feel like it was an enjoyable enough movie, and that's the thing about Marvel, is like, even when they're not on their movies are still enjoyable. There's not one Marvel movie that I didn't at least somewhat enjoy watching. Not one of them. They've all been fun, even if there's not a lot of rewatchability in some of them. They've all been fun. So yeah, Tony is having problems with Pepper because he's like building all these Iron Man suits, and she's just like, what the hell? And then a string of bombings by Mandarin left intelligent agents bewildered by the lack of forensic evidence. Happy Hogan is injured in one of the attacks, and then Tony issues a televised threat to the Mandarin saying, come at me, bruh. And they do, and then Tony's left fucking destitute. He meets a precocious 10-year-old boy named Harley and investigates the remains of the bombing. The extremists whose bodies explosively rejected the treatment. Blah, 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 blah. Anyways, had good moments in it. A really big fan of Shane Black, but this right here is one of the reasons why I'm a little apprehensive of Predator 3. Let's go ahead and move on to Iron Man 2. Which I certainly remember that one more. I've actually seen it quite a few times more. And this is a movie that is kind of maligned, which I think is weird because, like I said, there's not really a Marvel movie that sucks, but this one's got a really bad rap. I think that it's a fun movie. I kind of like how Mickey Rourke is just going way over the top with his strange Russian character. My bird. My bird. My bird. Just cut those out in post. I shouldn't practice impressions for the first time on air. Just makes me look foolish. So yeah, sorry about that. I'm trying to figure out what year Iron Man 2 came out. 2010. So this one's going back to, I think this was still Phase 1, right? Yeah, it sure was. Oh, I got a handy graphic here that we can check out while we're going over this stuff. Look at that. I didn't actually make that. I found that on the interwebs. Alright, so yeah, 2010 is when this one was released. With the world now aware of his identity as Iron Man, Tony Stark must contend with both his declining health and a vengeful madman with ties to his father's legacy. And then also there's the whole Hammer subplot that's got Sam Rockwell in it. So yeah, I like the cast of Iron Man 2. I can acknowledge that ScarJo's crazy hair was a little bit over the top. It's a kind of silly thing to be complaining about now that I think about it as a heterosexual male. Yeah, for the most part though, just it tried really hard to shoehorn this movie into the rest of the MCU. It was still in that kind of awkward phase where they had the idea of what they were going to do, but they hadn't quite figured out how to make it all go together seamlessly. I really enjoy the scene at the house party, where Tony and War Machine get into a fight. Man, there's some pretty good shit in Iron Man 2. I'm about to move it up the list. No, I'm not going to rearrange it right now. So number 17, The Incredible Hulk, starring Edward Norton. This was the follow-up. Actually, it was a relaunch of Ang Lee's Hulk that came out a couple years before that. The Incredible Hulk is it's a fine movie. There's a couple things about it that I really liked. Mostly the stuff at the beginning where it's almost more like a Bourne movie than it is like a Hulk movie. He's like on the run in Central America, hiding out. He's like, you know, it actually shows him as a scientist doing shit that makes him seem like a problem solver, you know, which is important to the character because Bruce Banner is a genius. So yeah, this one came out in 2008. There was a 2003 one was the Ang Lee film. So this came out the same year as Iron Man. It's produced by Marvel Studios, but it was distributed by Universal, and that's why there's been a lot of disputing between whether or not there was supposed to be a Hulk solo standalone movie or not, and it's because there were rights issues, and that's why with Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, it's again been reimagined and reinvented. This the Incredible Hulk had a very 1990s looking Hulk. He was very upright and tall and ridiculously jacked, and I didn't think they nailed the tone of it, and Hulk certainly didn't look like Edward Norton. So the way that they've integrated the motion capture into Mark Ruffalo's actual face, I think it's amazing. I mean, then we saw it again with Josh Brolin as Thanos, and they're just getting real good with the special effects over there. But yeah, I had a good time watching The Incredible Hulk. Hulk was never one of my favorite characters, but this movie did star Liv Tyler, Tim Roth, and Ty Burrell, William Hurt, which William Hurt will come back as General Ross in Civil War. This was like the only time he was in the movie, and that was great casting. So, yeah, I don't know. I hear Edward Norton was like a nightmare on the set and that he demanded that they rewrote a lot of the script. I'd imagine what worked about the movie probably did have a lot to do with Norton's script. Moving on to number 16, another fairly maligned Marvel movie, and that is Thor 2. Thor 2 is pretty standard fantasy movie, but I love the design in it. I thought that it looked great. There's a couple real cool cameos, including Chris Evans when Loki transforms into him. All of the stuff going on at Earth and with Malekith, not all that interesting, but this is a character that I really enjoy, and I despite myself, I thought it was a really cool and fun movie. Coming in at number 15, Guardians Volume 2. Yeah, I know. I'm probably going to get grief for this one. I actually, the first time I saw it, I didn't really care for it. I wasn't vibing with how hard they were pushing the comedy, and it felt like it didn't emotionally resonate as much because it tried to lean into everything that which, you know, typical sequel shit. It tried to lean into everything that the first one did right, and a lot of it just came off as like overkill or stale, and that's what my concern is about Ant-Man and the Wasp, is that it's going to be kind of more of the same, which is inherent to a lot of the sequels on the MCU, and that's why my bottom half of my list is so sequel heavy. Moving on though to let's see what year Guardians 2 came out 2017. It stars Kurt Russell as Star-Lord's father, or Peter's father, and it shows the relationship develop a little bit between Nebula and Peter, and I like that part. And then we're introduced to Mantis, and I like that character. So there are certainly things to like about it. I thought Kurt Russell did a good job, but the ending I wasn't feeling the part with the father. However, the Yondu sacrifice was amazing. Fucking amazing. That almost made the movie for me right there. But moving on to number 14, the First Avenger. Yep, Captain America. A character that I never really cared for. I thought that his altruistic nature was a little bit too much for me. And, you know, it's kind of like Superman. I have very similar feelings about Superman. I like for my characters to have conflict. And that's something that... Sorry. That's something that Captain America didn't really feel like he had for many, many, many runs. And then, you know, back when the Ultimates came around, they started making Cap a little bit more of a complex character. That's when I really started liking him. The First Avenger really ain't that movie. It's a very, you know, altruistic, red, white, and blue, America, rah-rah, Captain America. And that's great. That's true to the character. They set it up as a period piece, you know. It was more of like an old school serial. Definitely had that old school adventure vibe. It was directed by Joe Johnson. And it kind of had a feel like The Rocketeer, which is another one that Joe Johnson directed. Let's see. Captain America, The First Avenger was 2011. So we're getting a couple years into the MCU now. But let's go ahead and, hey, want to say what's up to Venice Beach Sports Network. I do appreciate you stopping by and leaving a comment section. I understand your dislike in Iron Man 2 from disappointment. I think that disappointment is a huge contributing factor to the way that we experience movies, you know, positively or negatively. I mean, everything goes into this, to how the person sitting next to you smells, to what you had to eat for breakfast that morning, right? So I do think that, wait, what the fuck am I talking about? Oh, yeah. Expectations, not external factors, expectations. I railroaded myself there. Not the first time, won't be the last time. Number 13 on the list is Ant-Man. Ant-Man is a fun movie. Now we're getting into the Marvel movies that I really like. Starting with number 13 out of 19. Dude, I'm telling you, these movies fucking knock it out of the park. So Ant-Man was a lot of fun. This is a movie that it was refreshing to see a kind of smaller scale, more comedic approach. I've always been a huge fan of Paul Rudd, like big time. Think he's like one of the funniest comedic people working today. This movie was released in 2015. It also stars Michael Pena. It stars Michael Douglas, Adam McKay, Joe Cornish. Oh, never mind. I'm reading off the screenplay now. Let's see. Oh, what's her name? Come on, the Wasp. Am I really not? Kate from Lost? Evangeline Lilly. I'm sorry, Evangeline. If you're listening to the show, I could never forget your name. I just had a short brain fart. So anyways, okay. Ant-Man was, you know, it was kind of a nice change of pace after Age of Ultron, which, if I'm not mistaken, it took place right after Age of Ultron. Yeah, several months after the events of Age of Ultron, and Scott's attempting to infiltrate the new Avengers headquarters in New York, and that's a really fun scene where he squares off against Falcon. I love the way that they portrayed Ant-Man's powers in the story, in that. So it's a movie that I come back to time and time again. The Baskin-Robbins shit at the beginning is really funny. So yeah, thumbs up to Ant-Man. Moving on to number 12, which is, now we're getting into Avengers territory with 2015's Age of Ultron. This is a movie that, again, Tony's dealing with kind of PTSD, and he decides that he's going to wrap a shield around the entire world known as Ultron. And when has artificial intelligence ever gone wrong, right? So, of course, he makes this AI sentient. It realized that the only way to protect humanity is to enslave humanity. Because that's what robots do, man. That is like their mission statement. Their prime directive. That's the science fiction term I was looking for. So anyways, Ultron ends up kind of manifesting himself through some of the old Iron Man armor. He eventually builds his own like vibranium suit. He's played by James Spader, and this is a movie where the Avengers are in full stride at the beginning of it. They're all working together in harmony, but they end up getting into conflict with two twins from Sokovia by the name of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Two good performances, by the way, and Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen actually played together in Godzilla as well. So they had a previous working relationship. It's weird to see him as husband and wife in one movie and then siblings in the next, but hey, I guess that's why they call it acting, right? Yeah, I don't know. Age of Ultron was kind of a big missed opportunity. I thought it was going to be this extremely dark and ominous movie. I remember people saying, it's going to be the Empire Strikes Back of Marvel movies. And it was not. It was not. It was, I mean, there were some fairly high stakes in it. I think we got our only real death in the Marvel Cinematic Universe up to that point. I might be wrong. Leave that shit in the comment section if I am. I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. That's the best part about watching people's YouTube videos is being like, huh, idiot, I knew that and you didn't. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that Age of Ultron really did have some great action sequences in it. It was really cool to see all the Avengers working together collaboratively. However, I did feel like Ultron was a slightly missed opportunity, and that it just had so many things going on all at one time. It didn't have a really focused narrative. So anyways, that's my thoughts on that. Moving on to number 11 is the original Thor. So this is a movie that by all accounts probably should not have worked like at all. But despite the odds, and with the help of some serious gravitas of Anthony Hopkins and Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth and the direction of Kenneth Branagh, who is a Shakespeare director who worked in theater and on plays, and just this really talented person to bring this Shakespearean element into this really silly movie about Norse mythology mixed with just a bunch of gobbledygook, really, and it turned out really solid. It turned out really solid. So I think that what the most impressive thing about Thor is just that it worked at all. The visuals were not great in the first Thor, and Asgard wasn't really rendered in a way that felt very lived in or very authentic, which is something that The Dark World actually did improve on because it had a director that had worked on Game of Thrones and had experience with those kind of fantasy movies. Who directed The Dark World? I don't want to just say some lady, but it was. Oh, never mind. Alan Taylor, some lady. I know that they were going to have Patty Jenkins do it. But anyways, Thor kind of reminds me of He-Man, right? Like, what a great fish out of water story when Thor actually shows up in New Mexico. He goes into that diner and it leads to some really funny scenarios. I think my least favorite thing about the original Thor is the fact that Chris Hemsworth had dyed his eyebrows. It looked ridiculous. I'm not sure which movie needed a less obvious ending. If you let me know down in the comments section. But yeah, I think Age of Ultron was unfortunately a movie that succumbed to being unfocused and just trying to be too many things at too many times. And I do agree with you. Thor 1 is very well written and directed. I think that it set up this character who, even though it took a while for them to find his rhythm, I love where his journey has led him. He was fucking rad in Infinity War. Like, man, I didn't go in with Thor being like my favorite character, but coming out of Infinity War, I'm like, he is fucking OP, dude. Like, super overpowered. He's a god, a little g. So anyways, all right, moving on from Thor to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, man, it was a head trip. It had definitely borrowed elements from things that we had seen before visually, but they took it to a whole different place. Like Inception did a little bit of that stuff, and then all of a sudden, Doctor Strange just takes this whole kaleidoscope Kirby-esque world to a whole different level, and it brings it to life in a way that we've never seen outside of comic panels that Kirby actually illustrated. It is just such a visually splendid movie. I love the fact that it starts with a black opening Marvel crawl. It didn't end up kind of fulfilling that moniker of being a dark Marvel movie. I thought the car accident at the beginning was fucking horrifying. Like, oh my god, dude. But it's a movie that, again, kind of worked despite itself. There was so many people like, why the fuck did they cast Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One? And I thought that was really cool, man. One of my favorite parts, obviously, is when she pushes him into the astral plane, or like punches him into the astral plane, and he's flying through all of these different like dimensions and vortexes, and he's got hands growing out of hands, growing out of his fingers, growing out of hands. It's just trippy, dude. It was a really, really neat movie. I had fun with it. I liked the end of the movie because it was like a classic case of subversion. I was so sick and tired of seeing cities getting dropped on people, which is what we got in Ultron. And so to see this clever subversion of the third act climax to where they're reversing time and stopping the destruction, I thought it was smart. It was a good little way to pivot the story to make it feel unique, to make it feel fresh, you know, and I definitely think it was. Gonna go ahead and move on to number 9. Fantastic movie. Now that we're in the top 10, we're really getting into, you know, some of the movies that I love. And I don't know if I said this at the beginning, I've literally seen all of the Marvel movies in the theaters. I promise you I'm gonna go see Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I'll get back with you guys as far as where I actually rank it. But I saw Black Panther just a couple months ago, maybe a little more than a couple months ago, and it's fantastic. The casting in this one is like, to be honest, Michael B. Jordan is just great in anything he is in, and the rest of the cast is good too. I mean, it's a huge ensemble. I love Chadwick Boseman. We'll talk a little bit more about his introduction when we get to Civil War. But I just love, you know, when I talk about lived-in worlds and how Asgard didn't feel really all that authentic, and that it didn't feel like maybe there were actually people there. Wakanda is completely the other end of the spectrum. It feels like it has its own rich culture and religious practices and just so much interesting thing. The technology is out of this world, which, you know, that's inherent to the comic books. It's a little silly. It's like, why are you guys fighting with spears if you've got laser guns on spaceships? Anyways, but you know, there's some things you just have to suspend your disbelief for. But I really like Black Panther. The music in it is phenomenal. The set pieces in it are really well done, and I just like that it is a different approach to a familiar kind of hero arc. It definitely had like a Macbeth kind of thing going to it, kind of a retelling of this very Shakespearean tragedy between families. So yeah, I really liked Black Panther. The only thing that I would have changed about it if it were my movie, I would have taken those damn rhinoceroses out of the movie. This shit turned into Lord of the Rings in the last 15 minutes, didn't it? And then it's like, where the fuck are they in Infinity War? I don't remember seeing any gigantic rhinoceroses charging at those, I don't know, those little things, the little Demogorgons? Demogorgon? Ending fight scene with the train was underwhelming in Black Panther. In general, the action sucked, in my opinion. You know, man, I hate to say it. I think that there were some really well done action sequences, but I do agree the fight scene at the end was a little underwhelming. I think the car chase was really good, but a lot of the action was obscured in darkness, and it definitely had a much more CGI look than a lot of the other Marvel movies. I mean, obviously, other than your Guardians and your Thor and stuff like that, it felt very plasticine on some scenes. So I can understand 100% where you're coming from with that. So let's go ahead and move on to number 8. A movie that's pretty similar to Black Panther, pretty similar to Doctor Strange, and it is the original Iron Man. This is the movie that kicked it all off, guys. 2008. It was a game changer. A lot of people say Captain America was a C-list comic book character. I can't speak to that, man. I've always known who Iron Man and all of these characters were, so he's quite popular to me. But I remember not knowing. I mean, we'd already had the X-Men comic book movies, and they were pretty good, right? I remember when it came out just being like, wow, that's dope. We're actually getting to see our childhood comic books brought to life on the big screen. Pretty cool. Wow, they cast Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. It's pretty fucking cool, dude. But it wasn't my X-Men. Let's just say that. Like, they tried. They came. I don't even want to say they came close. They tried. And they gave us a mainstream movie that audiences could at least get into enough to kick off a successful franchise. And before X-Men, I saw Blade, 1998's Blade with Wesley Snipes. It's another movie based on a comic book character. The less we say about Spawn, the better. But yeah, the point is there was a Daredevil movie or two, some Elektra. So there were some Marvel movies beforehand, but they weren't MCU proper. When I found out Robert Downey Jr. got cast to play Iron Man, I was like, what? That seems weird. Alright, fuck it, we'll give it a shot. Went in and watched this movie, man, and like, I hadn't felt that way since another movie that predates it, since I saw the original Spider-Man in theaters. A lot of people say Spider-Man 2 is a superior movie. I can't really speak to that. I know as far as my opinion and my personal preference go, I way prefer the first one because you can only see Spider-Man swinging between buildings in downtown New York City for the first time once. You don't get that experience twice, and that's the thing, is like, there was just, man, I was overcome with emotions in that Spider-Man movie. And Iron Man was like that in a different way. It was like, damn, they cracked the code. This is like a fun-ass superhero movie. Tony! Fucking Jeff Bridges. Tony! Anyways, so yeah, badass movie. I really like the way that they portrayed Tony Stark. I do feel like it's pretty true to the character while still kind of smoothing out his edges. He was a mad drunk in the first movie, and then he was like dealing with dying from that sickness of the thing in his chest in the second one, and then it was PTSD in the third one, and they've kind of gone back to his guilt and remorse for some of the bad decisions that he's made previously. So Tony's always dealing with some shit. He's a complex character, and I like that. Number 7, Guardians of the Galaxy. Man, what a soundtrack. What a movie. This movie is all about chemistry, and it just oozes cool. I've been a James Gunn fan since like Tromeo and Juliet, like bad old Troma movies, and then up to Slither, which was released a couple years before all of this stuff happened, probably like 2008, 2010. Older movie now, but James Gunn is a talented and interesting and very distinct voice, and I just think it's fantastic that they were willing to let James Gunn run with this, especially after all of the things that happened with Edgar Wright and Peyton Reed in regards to the development of Ant-Man, which is a whole different story. But I just think it's awesome that in a medium that is so dominated by focus groups and test screenings and all of those things, that they were just like, hey man, let's back up and let him make his movie, because it paid off in spades. This is the first time that we got a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, or a Marvel movie, that was just like, we're about to get fucking weird with it. We don't care. You're gonna enjoy the ride. And you did, you know? It's a fun movie about these rogue characters. It's everything that Suicide Squad wasn't. Granted, these are all really altruistic and like good characters in their core. But man, another thing that I think a lot of people didn't like about Guardians is the third act, the way that they beat Ronan with a dance off, and I thought that was cool, man. Again, it's like subverting the tropes of the genre. And Peters of, Mixtape Volume 1 and Volume 2, it's the fucking jams, man. They got all those good songs on there. I want to play Rubber Band Man right now. Let's see if I can do it without getting in trouble. Actually, no, I'm not going to do it. But I want to. Just know that I want to listen to Rubber Band Man with you. All right, number 6. And man, this is where it gets real hard to start ranking them because, like, God, these are just all such fucking badass movies. Number 6, I think, is pretty easy to go where it does. It's Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. I say that with the caveat. He's not my favorite hero. Batman is my favorite hero. But Peter Parker, man, he's the everyman. He's the comic book reader. You know, seeing this kid who he was just so smart and so tech savvy, and he loved taking pictures, and he was dealing with girl troubles, and, you know, going to high school was just very relatable. And I absolutely fell in love with Sam Raimi's take on the original Spider-Man trilogy. And then it fell off fucking hard with part 3, but I love those movies. And then I went and saw The Amazing Spider-Man with what's his ass? Andrew Garfield. And I liked the first one alright. I was like, oh, this is definitely like a more hipstery, cool guy take on Spider-Man. But that's cool, I guess. I mean, he does look like he's 35 years old. Not 35. He's too old to be in high school. He looks old. But I was alright with it, you know. I was like, I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but I was pretty lukewarm on it. And then the second one fell off hard. What the fuck is this? The tone was all wrong. It was a mess. Part 2, man. You know, when Gwen Stacy breaks her fucking back, I don't think that was supposed to be funny, but it was funny. I was just like, oh shit, saw that coming from a mile away. So anyways, yeah, when Spider-Man Homecoming, when I saw that Spider-Man was joining the MCU, I was like, man, this is getting real complicated. There are so many Spider-Man movies already. This is like a DC Joker situation we've got going over here. Slow your roll, man. We don't need another Spider-Man movie. And then I saw Civil War, which we'll get to in a minute, and the Brooklyn title comes up, and then the music starts playing, and we're inside Peter's, Aunt May's apartment, and I'm just like, wow, this is a great take on him. This is a kid. This is Peter Parker. This is so fucking cool. I loved it, man. The little thing he says, what does he say? If you're like I am, and you can help people, and you don't, you're responsible. Something like that. Anyways, what am I talking about? Oh yeah, so when after I saw Civil War, I knew I was in good hands. I'm gonna like this movie. It's gonna be cool. Went and I saw it, and I thought it was so fun. Just like a really feel-good, upbeat, very millennial-esque, you know, geared towards a much younger audience, but I'm okay with that. I mean, he's a younger character, and this is for a new generation of people. I might need to give it another watch. The comment that I'm reading says Homecoming is clunky and poor editing, but it's perfect Spider-Man portrayal. I didn't notice the clunky editing. I may need to give it a second watch. I do agree that it is the perfect Spider-Man portrayal, and I'll take your word for it. It sounds like you were paying attention to that shit, so I will definitely have to think about it on my next watch. I think one of the other real strengths of Spider-Man, and it really started to set the precedent moving forward, is a very complex and relatable villain. I think Michael Keaton may have been the perfect Vulture. Like, you look at the Vulture on paper, and you're like, what the fuck? They're not going to put that in a movie, are they? Oh, yes, they are. Thank God they changed the way that the whole thing looks. I mean, they made that suit look dope in Spider-Man Homecoming. But I love that, you know, Peter's trying to balance his personal life and his social life and this new life as a crime fighter. And things kind of start to get tangled up. What tangle webs we weave, you know what I mean? So yeah, I thought it was fun. I at first wasn't sure if I liked the technologically advanced suit, but I just kind of accept it, because really, I mean, if one person could have something like that, why couldn't everybody have something like that? And Tony was his mentor. I really like that relationship that they started to develop in Civil War, and we start to see it kind of continue to grow here. I thought that Iron Man was a good addition to the movie and allowed Spider-Man to transition more seamlessly into the MCU. So, yeah, big ups to them for not going back and showing the Uncle Ben Rice death again. Just, we knew. Anyways, moving on to number 5, and this, man, number 5... it might be, it's weird to say this, it might be my favorite to watch, and it's Thor Ragnarok. And I can tell you why. I can't tell you why it's not my favorite on the list, because it definitely is the one that I can revisit the most. It's funny, dude. Taika Waititi did What We Do in the Shadows, and that is just such an exceptional movie. Such a funny and well done mockumentary about vampires living together. And he went on to do Hunt for the Wilder People, and there was another one that I hadn't seen that he did. But you know, the Thor franchise is one that people were kind of lukewarm on. Again, I liked the first one quite a bit. The second one, it was fine. I enjoyed it, but what they did in Ragnarok was take a franchise that was a little bit self-serious, a little bit separated from the rest of what was going on in the MCU, and they cleverly fixed so many of the problems that people had with Thor. They stripped him down of his powers. They took his hammer from him. They put him on another planet where, I mean, like, they pulled Jane Foster out of the story, just on and on. They threw him against the Hulk, which some of the best parts of the Avengers is the fighting between Hulk and Thor. So the fact that they put these two characters up against each other in this movie, and then obviously they become allies, was just brilliant. It was the best way to use these characters. And I thought that the tone of Ragnarok, yes, it was very jokey. There weren't very high emotional stakes, but the movie was just metal as fuck, dude. It all looked like fantasy art from the 1970s, and then like Renaissance paintings when all the Valkyries are coming in and fighting Hela's dead soldiers or whatever. Like, it rocks. It's got the Led Zeppelin on the soundtrack. We get to see Thor go full-on God mode in it, and it's the first time we'd ever seen his powers unleashed on this scale. I love the fact that Hulk can talk a little bit. He's basically like this disgruntled little 2-year-old baby that can fucking destroy an entire planet. It uses elements from the Planet Hulk comic book, which is a favorite. Man, what a badass movie. Valkyrie, the first time we're introduced to her, she's just totally shit-faced getting off that ship. She's like hammer and booze, falls off the side of that little walkway, and she goes to prop herself up on some like animal carcass, and her fucking arm like falls into it. She just like slides into this big ass tauntaun corpse. Pretty good stuff. Yeah, and Jeff Goldblum, man, and Cate Blanchett never looked better, and she is just hamming it up, having a good old time with it. Tom Hiddleston, it's just fun. Definitely check that out. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Get lots of time talking to myself. Number 3 on the list is Avengers, and no shit, right? I mean, this one, it could have went on at number 1 on my list. It could have. This is the first time that I'd ever seen something like this, bringing all these characters together into one shared universe. What a bold choice it was so early on to put so many eggs in this basket and hope that it all hatched. And it did, and it paid off in spades. It was really cool to see all of these big personalities come together on the screen for the first time. And, you know, it opened up this new world for comic book movie crossovers. This is like the event comic books, similar to, you know, Civil War and Infinity War and stuff. And they just nailed it. They understood the dynamics and the relationship between these characters, and that's what these movies really do live and die on, is just the likability of the cast members and the witty banter between them, and you know, the spectacle and the music. I mean, they are aesthetically pleasing, they're crowd pleasing, and they're a whole hell of a lot of fun. And coming in after Avengers is, drumroll please, Avengers Infinity War. So again, this is another one. Could have went at number 1 on the list. It really could have went at number 1 on the list. This is a big movie. This is a ambitious on the scale that it's never been seen. I don't know if it'll, well, we got another one coming out next year. I don't know if another studio is ever going to be able to replicate this model, because Infinity War, again, should not have worked. On paper, how many characters, how many primary leads can you have in one movie? Well, Infinity War showed us you can have like 60. I mean, for real. And yeah, there were some characters who weren't served very well in the story. I mean, if your favorite is one of the more obscure characters, you might not get the moment that you want out of them. Hell, if one of your favorite characters is Black Panther or Captain America, you might not get the moments out of it you want to. But don't worry, because Tony's got plenty of airtime. But no, I love this movie. I love the way that they brought all of these different aesthetics and styles and worlds together. And Thanos, man, the best villain that Marvel's ever done. Obviously, he's complex. He's got rich motivation, different motivations than Vulture, but another character similar to Killmonger that is understandable. You can identify with their grievances. And it was just so smart. Smartly crafted and fun. So many good belly laughs in it. The relationship between Star-Lord and Thor is amazing. I mean, so many of the pairings, just like, I didn't even think about that shit, and that is awesome. So yeah, that was a fun one. I really liked Ebony Maw, that kind of cult leader, preacher villain. He was the first to go, unfortunately, but he was definitely my other favorite. He was my favorite of the what are they? The Dark Disciples, the Four Horsemen. That's not what they're called. Children of Thanos. All right. Moving on to number 1. It is the one that I haven't said yet. Civil War. Captain America 3, Civil War. Where did Winter Soldier go? I felt like I skipped. I did. I totally skipped Winter Soldier. Oh, I am not really good at this. I am shit at this. Okay. Number 4, Winter Soldier. We'll go ahead and talk about it now. This was just a gritty, stripped down version of a Marvel movie. It put this espionage thriller spy element into it. It kind of gave Captain America a little more morally ambiguous and a little bit more human motivations, which I thought was fantastic for him, and totally turned this character around from where I thought he was just a Boy Scout in First Avenger and in The Avengers to now I'm like, man, this guy is complex and he's a fucking badass, dude. That scene in the elevator, and he's like, all right, before we do this, does anyone want to get out? Man, that shit is gangster. All right, here we go. Here we go. I'm probably going to get in trouble for watching this. Oh, a little bit of sweat coming down. He knows what's going on. More big ass dudes getting into the elevator. He's like, oh, I'm getting set up. It's a shame I'm gonna have to beat the fuck out of all these dudes. That's what he's thinking right now. He's thinking, I can do this all day. I think maybe if I just continue to talk over the top of it, I will not get a copyright claim. Oh, yeah. And then it just pops off. But I'm sure you've seen it. Anyways, Winter Soldier is tough. It is definitely the most mature of the Marvel movies, I think. And it really does rely more on having an interesting story than it does on being a big, gigantic spectacle. My least favorite part of the movie is when all of the helicarrier shit starts happening at the end. But dude, is it Civil War? Yeah, it's Civil War, which is where we're actually finally at this time. Number 1 on my list is Civil War. This is really the perfect follow-up to The Winter Soldier. And it also bridges the gap between what we get in the Avengers movies with this much more grand, epic scale and this more personal motivation that we got in Winter Soldier. And it melds the two seamlessly to where the fantastical elements like Vision really don't seem out of place just because they cleverly weave this tapestry together in a way that was it was subtle and it didn't feel jarring, which is great, because there's a time in the MCU when if you would have introduced all of these characters, people would have been like, what the fuck? So yeah, luckily it wasn't that kind of situation. I think that what makes Civil War so fantastic is there's not really an antagonist. We could say that Baron Zemo is the antagonist, but really he more is representative of the collateral damage between these two conflicting ideologies and these two different paths of thought. And at different times during the movie, I absolutely understood both of their stances. And I think that that's good storytelling, is there's not a clear-cut good and a bad, and that's why when the fight scene over Bucky happens at the end between Cap and Iron Man, it's so powerful. It's devastating. You don't want to see either of those guys get hurt, and they're beating the fuck out of each other. And chances are pretty good they're going to be okay because it's a superhero movie, but it's like what it's doing to their relationship. This shit is tearing them apart. And ironically, Peter Quill freaks out and punches Thanos in the face for killing his girl, and everybody wants to make a big stink out of it. And then on the flip side of that, Tony can totally forget the fact that Bucky was under the influence of mind control when he killed his parents and beat the fuck out of him. Nobody's like, oh, I can't believe he did that. I don't know. Maybe it's different. You let me know down in the comment section. Yes, okay, you said Civil War to me is literally a comic book on screen and written beautifully. I agree. I agree. I think that there was such nuance to a story with all of these characters in it. I mean, before Infinity War, we're like, can they fit this many characters into a movie? Yep, they sure can. And not only did this movie feature all of the characters that I've mentioned already, it features Black Panther. It features a reintroduction to Black Panther, as I mentioned, or a reintroduction to Peter Parker and a first introduction to Black Panther. And neither of them really felt shoehorned in. Like, granted, they didn't get, like, Peter's was kind of a glorified cameo. Black Panther kind of had his own arc. Interestingly, like I said, there's no real clear-cut antagonist. Tony and Cap are both protagonists in their own way. Then you've got Baron Zemo on the side, whose family was killed by the Avengers, basically. So he's doing everything in his power to destroy them from the inside out. While all this is going on, Black Panther is on a path for vengeance. He's going after Baron Zemo. But through the events that occur throughout the film, he basically realizes that vengeance isn't the answer. And that's kind of where the movie leaves off. And I thought that it was a great way to grow this character without having to dedicate an entire movie to him. And that allowed to free them up to tell a story with Black Panther that wasn't just an origin story. But yeah, there are just, you know, so many great things about Civil War. I think that the airport scene between the two opposing sides was just really neat. It was something that you just have to see to believe, you know, to see all of the power sets all clashing and colliding with each other was just really cool. It was really cool, and I want to, of course.
Oh, you mean like those UFOs over Phoenix? What happened?
Yes, I can't. Look, I can't.
Where's the scene?
Because I've been me my whole life.
Here we go.
And I've had these powers for 6 months. I read books, I build computers. And yeah, I would love to play football. But I couldn't then, so I shouldn't now.
Sure, because you're different.
Exactly. No, I can't tell anybody that, so I'm not. But you can do the things that I can.
And that's why Peter Parker is my favorite superhero. He's just good for good's sake, man. I love that shit. So anyways, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. I do really appreciate you guys coming by and hanging out with me. Venice Beach Sports Network. I do not know your name, but it was really good to hear from you and to discuss these Marvel movies with you. I will be going live on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. CST. So you guys make sure to drop back by and talk to me because, you know, the reason why I do what I do is because I love talking movies. So even if there's, you know, not a ton of eyes on it, the point is we can have a good conversation. Yeah, the kid is a great actor, and the whole thing between Tony and Aunt May is this shit's just golden. So anyways, thank you guys again. If you want to follow me on social media, that is Jeremy B. Terrible on Twitter, Jeremy G. Branch on Facebook, and that's it. That's all I got. Thank you again.